COVID hitting us all. And so here I sit, a very outgoing person sitting here looking at my computer, my words, and talking to all of you, but seeing no one. So this is a big step for me. And so I've been very intentional in praying about this and asking God for me to focus on whatever He wants me to bring to you today in regards to your children and parenting. So thanks, Rachel and Surrey Christian, for having me. I find it an honor to be here and a privilege. I have grown children. I am a grandma, so I have been through this. I have taught children for a long time. So it comes from practical advice. My advice will be practical, and it comes from years of working with children. I still work with children. I'm a behavior interventionist, and I still work with a lot of families and children as they walk through whatever is going on in their lives. So tonight, I'm going to speak about intentional parenting. I like to start off reading Deuteronomy 6:5-7 that said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise." And this is where I'm basing my talk on tonight, that we need to be very, very intentional. When it says diligently, it means to do it with carefulness and conscientiousness. So we have to be conscientious about how we're going about this, and we have to be very careful, and as the word of God says, diligent. God has gifted us with our children. He has chosen those children to be part of your life and for you to be their parent. And it's just for a season. And I know there's days that it feels like this is a really long season, or ages, certain ages, you think, I'm ready for this one to move on. But these are just seasons, and they go very, very quickly. And I know a lot of people say that, and it's sometimes hard to stop and enjoy the moments of each season. But it is a great thing, speaking from experience and looking back. I'm thankful for the seasons and other times that they went very, very quickly. In Deuteronomy 6, it tells us to love the Lord our God first with all our heart. So that's our job. In order for me to teach my child, our children, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, you have to. You have to model it, you have to show it, and you have to do it. And not just give it lip service. Let your children see that you are actually doing it in your heart. You're doing it. It is your life heartbeat. If you're not, they will know. They will know for sure. They will know if you're not doing it with all your heart and soul. And it says to teach our children, like I said, carefully and conscientiously and diligently. You talk with them when you're in your house. So that's every day. When you walk by the way, which means when you're out and about and doing things, it doesn't change. And when you lie down, when you're going to bed, and when you wake up. So basically, 24 hours is when we're on with our children. To talk to them, to listen to them, to direct them, to guide them. Intentional parenting is purposeful. And you have to think about, how was I parented? And that does play a role in how you were parenting. And sometimes we say to ourselves, oh, we will not. Our parents have done something. We say, we will not be doing that. And then years later, you find yourself doing the exact thing your parents did. And it made sense at the time. So we do bring in how our parents have parented us. And so we have to think about, what kind of parent do I want to be? So just take a second right now and think in your head. And if you're sitting with someone, if you're sitting with your spouse or a friend, just turn to them and tell them, what kind of parent do I want to be? What do I want to do? What is my expectation of myself? I don't know if you've asked yourself that question or not. Intentional parenting gifts your children helps you gift your children for skills to grow spiritually, physically, socially, mentally, emotionally, and practically. And so, what kind of parent do I want to be? Do I want all that for my children? Of course I do. And when we're parenting, it demands a lot. Depends on the stage, it depends on the season. And it demands a lot, and it's not easy. And sometimes we think when we have a toddler, when we have kids in elementary school, we think, oh, this is exhausting. And physically, I think it is. And then you get the teenagers, and you realize it's not physically exhausting, but it's emotionally exhausting, mentally exhausting. And sometimes you think you are going to lose it. We're all there. We've all been there. We all know it. Sometimes when we are parenting, because it's so hard, we have to make some of the hard decisions and stand for what's right. And this is not popular. It is not. Not in our society right now. And it comes up against the current popular opinion. And even then, what is the current popular opinion? It depends who you're listening to. Really, none of this matters. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. That's, to me, what should be the popular opinion. So I'm going to talk tonight about kind of the goal as a parent, and then I will talk about the method and how we can go about doing this, and then I'll give you a few things that might hinder us from being able to do that, some of these things. And so if your questions come up, just ask Rachel, just send them to Rachel, and I will attempt to ask them. They can be specific or they can be quite open. Either way, I will attempt to answer them for you. So I said to you, what is the goal? What is your goal as a parent? So I'm wondering what your answers were. I'm going to just assume some of your answers were, I want my child to have good character. I want people to think they're a good person. I want to prepare my child for life. I want him or her to make some good choices in all the areas of life. We want them because they are a reflection of who we are. We want to protect them, don't we? We want to protect them from this crazy world. We want to protect their hearts, their minds, their feelings. And we really ultimately want them to be productive adults, making good choices, helping them develop self-control and also able to self-regulate. So does your child self-regulate? Do you self-regulate? Do we do this? Very simple. And what's here now, are you self-regulating with your own phone? I know that's a hot topic, and tonight my topic is not on social media, about social media and your child. But are you self-regulating? We're asking our children to self-regulate and not be on screen so much. And in COVID, this is kind of blown up in our face. But we still have to teach self-regulation, not just with social items or with the media, but with just in life. So does your child have good character? Are you preparing them for life? When they leave your home, do they feel prepared for life? Are they making good choices? Are you as a parent protecting their hearts and their minds and their feelings? And are they able to self-regulate? We want our children to be kind. We want them to be nice. We want them to be aware of others and aware of others' feelings, not just their own. And ultimately, we want them to develop into a person that God made them to be. So their given abilities and what are their ideas and what has God placed in them and birthed in them that they can flourish. Your job is to come alongside, be aware of what this is, and help them develop it. Because right now, there's a battle going on for our children's minds. There is. You know it. I know it. And it looks ugly. And it is ugly. And sometimes it's very much in our face, and other times it's very, very subtle. And so we need to be careful. Someone once said to me, I think you're brainwashing, a non-Christian said to me, I think you're brainwashing your kids to sending them to church or taking them to church all the time and just making them believe what you and John is my husband, what you and John believe. And I said, you can call it that, but I would rather be the one directing and guiding what she called brainwashing than anybody else. So I'm not going to give those reins to anybody. No, there's a battle for all our minds, but especially our children's minds. And so we need to make sure that we're aware of this. And how are we as parents making sure that battle, it's going on, but the battle is being won by you and your family. There's many ways to do parenting. One of the ones I'm going to talk about tonight is called a relationship-based parenting. And that's where exactly what the words say, you build a relationship with your children. And a lot of you might think, well, of course I have a relationship. I'm the mom, I'm the dad, that's my child. So we have a relationship. I'm going to talk about quite intentionally doing this and what that looks like and how you develop a deliberate relationship with them. Because I think that this, if you start doing this, then it sets the stage for the future. You build a relationship, and because I'm calling it building, I'm going to actually talk about a bridge. And so in your mind, you can think of a bridge, and that you are actually building this bridge for your child to walk with, to do life with, right? So how do we build this bridge? How are we deliberate? How are we intentional about doing this? We start by being intentionally engaging with our child, because this bridge is only as strong as you build it. And whatever tools you bring to it, and whatever materials you bring to it, and whatever thoughts and whatever ideas, that's how strong the bridge will be. What tools are you using? First and foremost, I would say God's word needs to be your foundation. It has to be that, because that's where you ultimately are going to get all your wisdom from, all your guidance from. We bring things in from other people, and that's fantastic, but we truly need to just ask God to give us the foundation. So what is your foundation with God? That's an answer between you and God, not between you and I, but it's between you and God. And also, who are you inviting to allow you to help build this bridge for your child? Who's a part of your child's life? What are there parents, grandparents, uncles and aunts, friends? Who else is involved in your child's life? I'll speak a little bit more to it in a few minutes. And how are you preparing them for the world that's going on? All this is all part of this bridge building. I'm calling it a bridge. I'm calling it a relationship bridge. And what does it look like? Well, it begins with prayer. Because before we had children, we started actually building the bridge. It became, maybe we started gathering things. Maybe it was a desire to have a child. Maybe it was a desire to have lots of children. Whatever that was, we started in this. When we found out a child would be arriving to our home, however that child comes into your home, the bridge is started because you have this incredible love and care for the child, and you start praying and asking God. And so that is where it starts. That is where the bridge starts to be built. And it begins with prayer, and you entrust your child every day, not just when they're born, not just when something happens. It's a daily occurrence. And this makes the bridge stronger, right? You also really, really need to know who your child is. What makes them happy? What makes them sad? What makes them mad, frustrated? We all kind of could answer, I know what makes my child mad and frustrated. But do you know what makes your child happy? Is it simple as ice cream? Is it complex as you having a discussion about a book that they've just read, which means you have to read it too. So it can be complex. Or what gives your child joy? Because happy and joy are two different things. What gives your child pleasure? What makes them want to do something or help you do it? Do you know your child's spirit? What crushes that spirit? Is your child one that if someone speaks sternly to them, it's almost like they go inward? And you as a parent, do you know how to open up their spirit? Do you know what to do? What is your child's spirit like? And if you have more than one child, there's all different spirits, and you have to know how to manage those. So I used to be able to tell how their day was, but even how they closed the door when they're getting in the car in high school. I could tell if it was a good day or a bad day. And you can just tell. And right there and then isn't the time to talk about, oh, you need to be happy all the time. No, they were frustrated, upset, sad, mad, whatever. Make sure you take opportunity later to speak to them about it. Seemed like you're upset when you got in the car, as opposed to you're upset. Nobody wants a directive. Nobody wants to be told how they're feeling. But they want to tell us how they're feeling. So we have to open the door and make sure that we're allowing them time and space to do that. And so that's all part of the relationship building, knowing who your child is. Who they really are, and what are their favorite activities? How do they engage with others? How do they engage in your family? How do they fit into your family, and what are they bringing to the family? And how to engage with them. follow through. This is a big one for me. So if you promise your child something, then make sure it's doable on your part, because they will call you out. So I have a little saying. It says, mean what you say what you mean. Sometimes it's hard and we make mistakes and we promise things, or we rebuke or get upset and say, you're not going to do this, because we're annoyed in the moment. Sometimes we have to be careful with that. And even if we do, we can always ask for forgiveness. We can always say we've made a mistake. It's okay. This is all part of the character building for your children, to realize you do make mistakes. We do need to apologize if we have done something incorrect with our children. But I think it's really important that you follow through. So for example, for this one is younger children, is say, if get your backpack, let's say for school, when in normal times. A lot of my stories are more in normal times, not a COVID time. I may think of some COVID situations as well, but you're free to ask me questions about that. And so you say, grab your backpack. And so they don't grab it. And they say, well, if you don't get your backpack, I'm not giving you a snack, or I'm not giving you lunch, I'm not doing this, or you're not coming home with me. Well, actually, they are, because you can't leave them at school, because the school will call you. And when you get home, if they're hangry, you are going to feed them. So you're putting yourself, it's actually more hurtful for yourself. So you have to make sure that whatever you're saying, you can follow through on, right? Because what happens is you end up just grabbing the backpack, and then they feel that they've won that. And that actually weakens the bridge. I will talk about weakening the bridge. When we are building this relationship with our children, we have to state clear and concise rules. Just because you said this was a week ago, they're kids, they forget. So you have to make sure that you might have to reiterate them. They may not be listening a good portion of time, or claim they're not listening, or have you not heard me? No, I didn't hear you. What do you mean you didn't hear me? I just said it 2 seconds ago. They're right, they weren't listening. Also, they don't like the answer, or they don't want it. So maybe just talking to you a little bit more might give them the answer they want. So you state clear and concise rules. You state clear and understandable boundaries. And you give good reason for them. I think it's really important that you do that. Let them know the goal. What are the expectations? What is the goal here? Why are we asking you to have good manners? What's the goal? So when you go out, you'll have good manners, and people won't think that your parents haven't taught you anything, and you're being a person with good manners. When possible, give a positive alternative. So what I mean by that is, instead of saying, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. So very, very easy example is you're asking them to pick up the toys, and they don't want to do it. You say, a child will say, do you want to pick up the toys? They're going to say no. You have to pick up the toys. They're going to say no. Favorite word for especially very young children. You'll say, it's time to pick up the toys. You can decide a positive alternative. If your child has a hard time, you can say, do you want to get started and I'll come after you've gotten started, or do you want me to help you get started and then you can finish up? So the toys, because we want the toys picked up. So you have to decide what it looks like. So you know that you're going to end up probably picking up some of the toys, but you don't want to be that done in a negative manner where you're picking up the toys. And why I can speak to this is obviously has happened to me. You're picking up the toys and you're throwing them in the box. Like, I can't believe I have to do these. Aren't even my toys. You're talking all this. That is not a positive alternative. A positive alternative is realizing, I will pick up some of these toys. Maybe he or she can choose when I'm going to do it. And if they don't, then you make the choice. You don't need to stand in there and negotiate with them. If consequences are needed for behaviors, ensure that they're quick and in the moment. So especially for younger children, as you get with the older children, sometimes you have to go off and think about them, because sometimes in the moment consequence for an older child, it punishes you more. So for example, if your child is driving and they're supposed to be home with the car and they're not, but you in a normal situation, you've had that child help you with the other children, drive them to lessons and everything. Okay, you're grounded from the car for a week. Well, I just grounded myself. I'm going to have to drive everybody too. So you have to decide, that's for an older child, you have to decide, what the consequences are. Make them age appropriate and make them to what is happening, right? So for example, a baby is in their crib and they're throwing out all the toys. What's the deal? You go and you say, you can't have these toys. That's the natural consequences to not having this. They're mad, they're hurt, they're a baby, right? There's a toddler more so than a baby. And natural consequences are the best. And actually the best consequences that come from siblings, come from peers, from school. For example, homework. There's parents that are still helping a lot with homework. And I used to say to my girls, I already passed grade 3, do not need to do that again. Grade 4, grade 5, I passed them all. So I can help you, but I am not doing your work. And teachers know when parents have done assignments or when parents have done things. And if they come home and they say there isn't any homework, and then all of a sudden the next morning they're panicking because they forgot and they just remembered they had homework, do not keep them home from school. Do not rescue them and help them do it quickly. They need to have some natural consequences to that. You gave an opportunity for homework. The natural consequences would be whatever the teacher would enforce at that point. So hopefully the teachers would do that and support you in that. Let them know, narrate and label feelings for them if they want it. Some children don't want it. Some children, like when they get in the car or whatever and they're grumpy, probably not a good idea to say, oh, you're grumpy. Seems like you're sad. Is everything okay? No. Okay. Do you want to talk about it now? No. Okay. Whenever you want to talk about it, I'm ready to talk about it. Things like this, as opposed to, you're grumpy. No, I'm not grumpy. And they're even grumpier because you've actually told them. So you have to be careful how you narrate and label the feelings. I think be aware of them and maybe give them a couple feelings. And then ask them, when they want to talk about it, if they want to talk about it, or even come around on a different angle and say, hey, looks like there were some things at school that were good, with the things that were upsetting or sad or hurtful or whatever word you want to use in your home. And so we definitely have to be aware of feelings. I don't think everything has to be about feelings, but a big portion of it does. And this is part of this bridge building. We figure out how to talk to that child about how they feel. And when is the right time to talk to that child? Some kids at night, they open up and they are talkative. For those children, make sure that you then put a buffer into your evening routine so you're not there till 9:30, 10 and everybody's exhausted and tired. So maybe bedtime is a bit earlier for that child because they need so much time to talk. Maybe that's the last child you go to say goodnight to. So you have to decide, how is that working? And if you have obviously more than one child, then your parenting bridge is the same with all your children, but maybe you're having little different roads for each child and how they're doing it. So for example, that child that needs you to chat at night about their feelings, then you decide how to do that and figure that out. And if that child wants to continue to chat and talk some more as you're leaving, one more thing as you leave, but if they always have one more thing, put a little paper and pen beside and say, hey, you know what? You probably have lots of things to talk about. I'm done listening. So put it down there. We can talk about it tomorrow. So give it somewhere for that child to put that feeling. We want the best for our children, don't we? We do. We want to trust them. And we want them to trust us. Children trust us, and we should be trusting them. Let them know you trust them. Give them responsibilities so they can build trust. And then we all know trust will be broken. We've broken it with our parents. My dad used to say to us, you have broken my trust, but you are able to restore it. You're able to gain it back. And then he would give us reasons and things on how we could do that. And so that is, if they're broken their trust through a word or what they've said or how they haven't followed through, then you can make sure that next time they're doing that and say, remember, we're working on trust. So if you say you're going to be home at 5, I'm expecting you to be home at 5. And that's how you start building up trust. If trust is broken, there's consequences for that trust. It depends on what kind of trust is broken, what kind of behaviors are done, but it must be restored. whatever it looks like for your family. What does restoration look like your family? And I'll just give you a little instance for this. I stopped quite a few years ago when I was teaching to request the word I'm sorry. I think it's a good word. I am not against the word I'm sorry, but I started to change it because children were going up to other children and say, you know what, you need to go say you're sorry. And the children were going up to the other children and saying, I'm sorry. And they're not sorry because they aren't feeling it. But they were saying the word because they need an adult always requesting it of them, or at times maybe demanding of them, or someone else was making them say it. And I felt like children weren't doing it. So I changed it. And if the word I'm sorry comes out, I'm okay with that. But I changed it to call making it right. And so you had to go up to that person and you had to say, I was wrong for. So an example for younger children playing, someone grabs a toy, they need to, instead of going up and say, and they're hurt in the grab, instead of saying, I'm sorry, and then leaving it at that. Sometimes we say, what are you sorry about? But when we have to say, I was wrong for grabbing the toy and hurting you, we take on responsibility for that. And then I get them to say, are you okay? And then we have to live as an adult. I was usually helping negotiate that and so help them through that. As a teenager or as a even a younger adolescent, they still need to go up and say, I was wrong for calling you that name. As soon as we say, I was wrong, it's a really hard pill to swallow. Even as an adult, think about it. If we have done our friends, if we've had an altercation with our friends or with our husbands or with our wives, it's really hard to go up to say, I was wrong. Like I said, if I'm sorry comes out, I'm thrilled with that, that's fine. But I find if we own what we're doing is wrong, it really helps us. And if we can help our children own it, it will set them for life. Because people are blown away with other people that say, you know what, I was wrong. Where do you hear that? Rarely. Rarely do we hear I was wrong. And we are wrong. And we've covered it up with, I think, the word I'm sorry. Now, typically the word I'm sorry comes out because at that point, then you truly do feel sorry. And it sounds like they're sorry. So I'm not against the word at all. I think it's good. But I just think that if we can say, I was wrong for doing that, I think it helps build their character. And also when we're making this bridge nice and strong between you and your child, and if we have done anything wrong to them, if we have gotten annoyed or been upset or yelled, or we can go in and say, I was wrong for yelling. I was not. You weren't wrong for maybe being upset about what the behavior was, but you were probably wrong for yelling. Like I said, I've been there. I had one child that I could look at and go like this, and another one kept me humble. And so I did have to say I was wrong. And when you say you're wrong, and when you're talking and reinforcing things that you want them to do, and they see you doing it, this is making the bridge stronger between the two of you. Sorry. Continue making. When they're born, like I said, we must pray about them. That doesn't just stop when they're born. Prayer for them should be part of their life, should be part of your life. Covering them in prayer before they go. You help them to make good decisions. When they're not in your care, when they're out there, what is best for them? God knows. They're his children. He's just lent them to you, and they're just borrowed for a bit of a season. When we're praying for them, we're building the bridge stronger, and we're continuing to pour into our children. When we spend time with them, again, we're making the bridge stronger. Another thing really important to do, and it's really hard to do with COVID right now, is volunteer with them. Find an organization that will let you volunteer either as a family or volunteer with one of your children. And like I said, COVID has kind of put a kibosh to a lot of this, but it's fantastic for them to see where you volunteer. Probably a lot of you volunteer at the school. It's good for them to see that. It's good for us to volunteer and show them that we'll do something for someone else that doesn't necessarily, we don't have to. It's not a family member. It's not someone that we have to do it. So volunteering will show, your children will watch you and how you respond to people and how you respond within that situation. And then you can see your children and what are they like. Have fun with them. Have fun with your children. This is all part of building the bridge. Do family nights. And however many children, maybe, I don't know how many children God has blessed you with, but people can decide to take turns on what they want to do for family night. So for some children, maybe it's game nights, maybe it's bike riding, maybe it's a movie night. Again, COVID has kind of made us stay home more and have a lot more family nights than we maybe necessarily have had to, but nothing's wrong with that. And so people can plan fun family nights. And again, the bridge is getting stronger. You're making memories, right? We all take pictures of things, and young children maybe don't remember something, but they see a picture, and the memory will give them the memory. They'll have a memory once they've seen that picture. Have traditions. What are your traditions? And not just around Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving. What are your traditions for the birthday person? What are your traditions? What are your traditions when school's out? Do a lot of these things. The kids will remember that. Observe and watch them. See your leaders come out, see your followers, and embrace that and help them to realize if you're a follower, then you can be a strong follower but still have your opinions. And you teach them that, and it makes their bridge stronger in life. Observe them making choices. Watch them. Don't make it for them. I'll talk how we weaken this bridge, but watch them make choices. Let them make some choices. And sometimes their choices might not be the best choice, but watch them. Sometimes we intervene, and that's not good. See how they learn. Watch how they learn. Does your child need a clean desk and everything set up? Maybe that's what you do, but maybe your child doesn't. I have a friend who is type 1 personality, and everything has its place, and she has the tidiest of homes. It's lovely to go visit, but she has a child who goes all over the place. So when he was sitting backwards on his chair, eating apple and fruit and still studying, it drove her crazy. But she realized that actually that's how he learned. He couldn't sit in a chair. He sat in a chair all day at school. That was just the worst thing she could do. So sitting backwards and literally providing him with snacks kept him working there. She's totally against her idea. But she realized who he was and realized, oh, okay, that's how you learn the best. And then told the teacher and said, I actually think he needs breaks. I think you'll get more of him if he can actually sit backwards on his chair or have more snacks or more things available to him. And she worked with the teacher, and he had a way better year. He said the best year because I actually figured out how he learned. So know how they learn, figure out how they learn. Are they a visual learner? Do they want it read to them? Nothing wrong with that. Reading a book out loud with your child, yes, they will learn to read. Nothing wrong with you reading that. Guide them when they're making these choices and help them make good choices. Help them not always make the good choices for them, but not always make choices. And even that child that always wants your approval and goes to the ice cream and say, well, I don't know what I want. What do I want, Mom? Can you make it for me? No, push them. I think you make great choices. I think you enjoyed whatever, strawberry last time or chocolate last time, but you decided what you want today, because it'd be easier for you to just say, well, have the strawberry one because it's holding up the line or something like that. But let them make choices. I'm picking fruit. I mean, ice cream right now, but it doesn't really matter. This is in life because we want them to make good choices.
Oh dear.
Choices to make, then they will know that they're strong in their choice.
Okay. Just bear with me for one moment because it appears that perhaps Donna Lynn is having some internet connection issues. Just one second.
So who knows? But
Okay, there we go.
love it and hate it. And I don't even like the word hate, but yes, I'm using it with technology.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, now where was I? Traditions, right? No, it was about guiding them and making good choices.
Yes.
Yes. So when you help them make good choices, you're there to walk alongside of them. If they make mistakes, we all learn from them. We should all learn from our mistakes, the good ones, the not so good, and teach them that it's not the end of the world, even though it might feel like the end of the world to them, but it's not, and how we can learn from them. And sometimes they want you to give examples of times in your childhood, and other times they don't. So be really careful with that and say, I know how you feel. No, you don't. This has never happened to you before. It actually has. Well, when? An invitation, as opposed to, well, that happened to me when I was in grade 8, that happened to me. Don't do that. Let them invite you in to giving your story if you can, and make the story real. Make it true. Because if you make up the story, then what if you need to say it again? Are you going to remember the made up story? Not necessarily. But if it's true and that did happen and you felt left out, or you felt bullied, or you felt cut off a team, or however you felt, how they're feeling, you can talk from your heart and how you handled it or not handled it, or how your mom didn't know about it, or your dad didn't know about it, how you kept it inside. I don't know what happened. But notice how I said, I know how you feel. No, you don't. Actually, I do. Because when I was young, it happened to me. Oh. Do you want to know? Do you want to hear about it? No. Okay, so you leave it at that. You're like, well, but I want to tell you. No, they don't want to hear. But if they want to hear about it, or maybe another time, but keep that communication open. That's intentional parenting, really thinking it and not pushing your agenda. And also not overthinking it too. And the way that a child comes and they feel like they have been bullied at school, and use that word. And you right away go back to when you feel it happened to you, because somewhere along the line, someone's bullied it. If you've had brothers or sisters, they've been mean, and we have thought they've bullied us, or someone at school, or someone has pushed you beyond what you want to do, or think, or say. So right away, our worst bullying scenario, whenever we see our children being bullied, we go straight to there. And maybe theirs wasn't as deep-rooted as yours. I don't know. I'm picking bullying. There's lots of other words. There's lots of other things. But we have to be really careful that we don't inflict or put our emotion about that situation onto them. I think you can tell them your story. I think you can tell them what went on for you. But I think you have to be very careful on how you go about this. Interact with them, make their interests, even though you do not care for cards or hockey cards or Pokemon cards or whatever cards there are, or shopping or whatever it is, or playing Go Fish, playing the game for the 100th time, you're interacting with their interests. And if you have more than one child, you realize the season will pass. They will not want to play Go Fish every day, forever. There will be passing. But when you're doing that, you're pouring into them and you're building your bridge with them. You know their interests. If you right now, could you tell me just off the top of your head, obviously not having a response from people, but could you name off your children and give me what their interests would be? What their interests would be when they're around the home, what their interests would be if they could go out and do whatever they wanted. So quickly go through your children and decide, oh yeah, they like to that, they like to that. Yes, if they could do whatever they wanted in the world, where would they want to go? You don't know that, maybe ask them that. Maybe on a family night, ask them. Let's all use our imaginations. Where would we want to go? This builds a bridge. You get to know. You did not know that your child had thought she wanted to go to Paris, or he wanted to go to Paris. All of a sudden you know this, right? So these are the types of things that build the bridge, that makes it strong. Have the conversations with them, and all the conversations. This is a huge thing. Certain and actually most of the hard conversations must and are best heard from the parents. So when your child is learning about sex education at school, that should be their first time. Obviously age appropriate and words appropriate and all that, but it should come from you. Parents should be the ones giving the information. The world comes at us very fast, and at 100 miles an hour or more. And our job is to help them slow it down. And that's hard because we're in that fast-paced world and we're going at it too. So that means we have to slow it down too. When they get things thrown at them, help them process the information in a healthy way. However, talk about issues. Nowadays, who do we believe? What do we believe? Talk about local issues. What's going on? Talk about global issues. What's going on? And globally, we were all shut down. Have conversations with your kids. Talk about tragedies. Because as hard as it is, talk about them. Because tragedy will strike your family at some point if it has not, and probably all you have. And so that's age appropriate. And this is a hard one for kids. This is a hard one to do, to know how to do it. So if you're already talking about things, and let's say the news, and the news can be quite horrific at times, but talk about things when maybe a bomb goes off and you think, oh no, they don't need to see that. But they might see it. Talk about it. Talk about COVID. See if they have any underlying worries, underlying fears. There's a lot going on. What COVID has done has brought everybody's anxiety level onto high alert. We all should be anxious. It gives us the fight or flight. It's good. Anxiety is okay. If not managed, it's not okay. Worry is okay, but if not managed, it's not okay. So COVID, talk about it. Talk about what your family is deciding how to do it. And what are the policies at school? And what are your policies when you're out and about? What is never, a year ago, this would have never been part of my talk. But now it is. COVID's part of our talk. All these things obviously do in a developmental and an age appropriate way. And by doing all this, you're building a bridge, you're finding it out, and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, they were a little bit more nervous about it than I thought. Oh, okay. Oh, now I know why they were having difficulty doing this, or maybe not wanting to go to school, or not wanting to do this. When we talk and tell them their things that they need to know, or what your stand is, or your beliefs are, you are again building and strengthening that bridge. And it's only really as strong as you build it, right? When we ignore things, when we think, oh, something's going on with my child, I just know it, and we don't have the energy that day, that's okay. But don't let it go another day or another 4 days. And maybe you're feeling down, maybe you're feeling overwhelmed, then have your spouse help you. I'm going to talk about having people come into your life that you can walk alongside. You teach them Deuteronomy. It tells us you teach them all along, right? You impart your wisdom. And where do you get that wisdom from? You think, well, I can't say I'm wise. You are. And you can ask God for wisdom for your children, for that moment, for that situation. He's entrusted you with those children. He'll give you wisdom for that child to answer. You may be walking into the room thinking, I have no clue what I'm going to say about this. Beg God for wisdom. I promise you, he will give it to you. Because we're preparing our children to become godly adults. And you can even tell your child that, I wasn't sure what to say to you, but God gave this wisdom. God gave me these words. And you're teaching them that that's important to you, and that's who you go to. As you walk through life with them, you start out building the bridge, and you're out in front of them and as they're younger. And then sometimes you're walking alongside of them, and a good portion of the bridge is walking alongside and being with them, sometimes running ahead, making it stronger there as they're going. And then they're walking in front of you, and then they're off the bridge. And you look back and you think, I've invested this much time. You look back and you see the care and the love and the memories, and they'll take it with them, and you will have them. And they will come back to them as adults. They will. I have adult children, and they're coming back to these memories. And some things I just did. I thank the Lord I did do. That was Him giving me the wisdom. I was intentionally in my parenting, not at all of what I'm talking about, not to the degree I'm speaking about today. But I realized that God taught me those things, and I thank Him for that. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we weaken this bridge, or how, I'm going to just say weaken the bridge. So we weaken the bridge, or we weaken our parenting and don't allow our children to be what they should be or what God has intended them by rescuing them. We do things for them. And sometimes it's just easier to do, but it doesn't do them any service. Sometimes we make excuses for our kids. Don't. There's lots of different types of parenting. Two ones I call is the helicopter parent and the lawnmower parent. So you know the helicopter parent, you know what a helicopter is. It's around, it's always looming, it's very noisy. And at any opportunity, it's going to sit down and then rescue whoever needs to be rescued. Not a good idea. And then the lawnmower parenting is the one that's out in front of your child, like a lawnmower, just taking everything out of the way of the child. If that's, that might hurt them, I'm going to lawnmower off that. I don't want that teacher to get mad at them, so I'm going to send the teacher a note saying we were out last night, she couldn't do her homework, or he couldn't do his homework. No. You'd given maybe ample time. Unless there's a disaster, unless there was something critical in your family, no, don't be that lawnmower parent. And worse yet, don't be the helicopter lawnmowering parent, where you're hovering and going down. Hovering and going down is exhausting, and there's no natural consequences at all. So we weaken the bridge when we do these things. We also, when we overreact. And so sometimes you just need to listen and gain it all in. And sometimes maybe ask for the story over again. Because if we sometimes take in more details the second time around. We weaken the bridge when we yell. We've all done it. I've done it. It's hard. It's hard not to yell because sometimes they're exasperating. And sometimes we want to get it out, so we yell. And that, it just weakens the bridge. You don't like being yelled at. I mean, I'm assuming you don't. I don't like being yelled at. I like a voice that's raised at me. I was driving into a parking lot the other day, and I'm old. And this guy tore open his door and hit the side of my car. He got out and started yelling at me that I was a horrible driver and I was coming in fast. And it was like, and I started crying. I hate being yelled at. And I was like, but I wasn't in the wrong. It didn't matter. So I decided, okay, what do I do here? So I went back in my car and shut the door and waited and gathered myself and said, Lord, just give me the strength to know how to manage this and know how to. Anyways, apparently, anybody that opens the door without looking, they're at fault 100%. Just so you know that. But I did not like being yelled at. Our children don't like to be yelled at, let alone in front of anybody. So if you need to speak to your children a little more sternly or take them away privately. Talk to them. Control ourselves. Use the self-control, the self-regulation we want them to have. Let's use it. We weaken the bridge when we fight with them. Remember, you're the adult in this situation. And we get into it. The next thing you know, you feel like you're fighting with your child, which we are. Self-regulate. Show some self-control. We weaken the bridge when we're not respectful for our children. Respectful. We're not encouraging. And we don't parent them. Sometimes we just don't. We can't be bothered. We're too tired. It weakens the bridge. We don't do them any favors. Or when we let them parent themselves. They can't. They're children. We allow them to have too much control. They think they want it, but they can't. They need boundaries. Set them. When we don't set the boundaries, we weaken the bridge. When we don't set the guidelines, we weaken the bridge. They are going to push up against them. That's their job. And they're doing a great job, some of these kids are doing, at pushing the boundaries and pushing the guidelines. But you as a parent has to know what they are. You have to know. When we ignore behaviors and we think they'll go away, we weaken the bridge. We're not intentional. When we disconnect from them and we use the device that we all use to get away and disconnect, that phone or the electronic, because it's easy. That's not yelling at me. That's obeying me. That's doing everything I want it to do. But our kids, so we disconnect from them and we use something else. And then they see that. You're asking them to get off the phone, but then you're on the phone. And then if they say, well, you're always on your phone, then you lose it, you blow up. Sometimes when I feel like I kind of figure out, why was I upset when that guy yelled at me? Why did I feel bad? Did I feel like I wanted to yell back? No, I didn't. I'm an adult though. But probably the kids want to yell back because they're feeling like they're being yelled back at. They're being yelled at, sorry. Be out in front of things with what's going on. Know what's going on in your child's heart. Know what's going on in your child's life. Know what books they're reading. If you don't know what the book's about, read it, skim it. There's lots of ways to read a book easily and quickly. Download an audiobook if you're too busy, and when you're going for your walks, listen to that so you can engage. Maybe they don't want to talk about it, but at least you know what's being put in their heads. See what they're studying at school. Be out in front of things. Like I say, we live in a very fast-paced society. At times, we only have time to react. So I used to think, and this is a really good one, especially as your children get older, I used to use the words, let me think about it. Because they don't want to ever hear no. None of us want to hear no. And so if let me think about it, they had a chance. They think they have a chance, even though you know it's probably still you know. But if they let me think about it, gives you time to think about it. Because sometimes we're just bugged about something, we just say no. And that's not necessarily always the right answer. No, you can't. No, I don't want to. No, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered thinking. Let me think about it. And so when you think about it, okay, and also give them a time when you will tell them the answer to it. Well, okay, I'll tell you after dinner, or I'll tell you tomorrow morning if you can go and do that or whatever. So be intentional. Be intentional when you say, let me think about it, and then make sure you do it. If you have a poor memory, then write it down and say, you need to talk to so-and-so or to this child about this. So be intentional. How are you doing this? Parenting is the one investment that makes a difference for your children. Yes, we can invest financially for our children so that they have a good future. But what kind of child do you want to put out to that future? So invest in them. Be an intentional parent. You take time and effort to do this. You're coming to this seminar. You're reading some books. You're doing things. Maybe you follow some people on social media that are really good, that are more like you. Find someone that you like their parenting. Become parenting buddies. And say, hey, I like how you do stuff. Typically find someone that's a little bit more ahead, maybe a season or two ahead of you, and use them. Ask them questions. They've been through things, and they'll first just say, I didn't do it all well, but this is maybe, sometimes when we look back on it, we say, this is how I might have handled that. And you can gain from their understanding of looking back onto things as well. Find someone you trust, you admire, who helps you become the parent you want to be. What kind of parent do you want to be? Are you that parent? Who do you have on the sidelines cheering you on? Find someone. Maybe it's a counselor. Maybe it's an educator, a friend, a pastor, someone who can think clearly for you. Because sometimes in the middle of it, we're not thinking clearly, right? So think of someone that comes to mind that you could say, hey, you know what? Let's be parent buddies. I like how you parent. I like how you do things. Or can I call you? Can I talk to you? Growing up, I had a lady that I always turned to, and I would chat with her about it. And when my girls were younger, when our girls were younger, and her children were going through teenage, it was not pretty. It was not pretty. But I realized how patient she was, and times not so patient, but just I could turn to her and ask her, okay, in this season, this is what you did. And then she'd ask me to pray for her children. I never gave her, obviously, anything about what was going on for her. That wasn't the relationship. The relationship was me coming to her. And in turn, she would say, can you please pray for wisdom for my children, or for me for wisdom to know how to manage them because I'm having difficulty here. And I remember going to her house one day to visit her, and I knocked on the door and she says, come in, I'm just upstairs. And so I went upstairs, and she was literally taking everything out of her teenage daughters and put it in the hallway. And I said, what are you doing? She says, she won't clean up. I want that clean room tidy. And she literally put it all in the hallway. She goes, I don't even know if this is a good idea over here. Still remember it to this day. Well, the girl came home and was very upset that everything was out in the hallway, and then ended up deciding that half the stuff she didn't need, which her mom knew, and then made her room as tidy as she could. But the mom said, I don't know what else to do. And I thought about that later on, because I had a child who decided tidying isn't one of the things that she wants to be. What do I do here? And I didn't move everything out into the closet, out into the hallway, but I did a form of that. And so I think we can learn a lot from these people, because because crises will happen. Wish that on anybody, but crises will happen. And so do you have someone that knows you, that knows your children, that you can talk to, that can help you walk through this? Don't wait till you're in distress to ask for help, because where do you start? But if you have this person, they know. And typically that person is talking to you. And especially if you have children around the same age, you're both going through. Allow your children to have lots of questions. Allow them to come to you with anything. Are you that open door? Does your child think that they have to come with a big question or a little question? Or can they come with any question? It doesn't matter the size. If they come with your question about drugs, are you going to judge them? Are they going to feel judged? But if you, remember I said, have the big conversations, have the conversations about drugs, have the conversations about the east side. Some people volunteer down on the east side. That's a way to have a conversation on the way home. So allow your children to have questions. And in the same turn, you can question them as well. So it's a two-way street. Parenting, like I said, is one of the toughest things that we do, but it's the most rewarding, I feel. We need to use our heart and our head when we are parenting. We need our hearts when they're hurting and confused and searching and frustrated. And we need to use our heads when they have questions, need guidance, and want answers. And we want the answers. I want the answers and the guidance to come from you. You are their encyclopedia. You know everything about them. The answers need to come from you. And if you don't know the answers to a question, tell them let me think about it. Let me go figure this out. And maybe you call that person or you go research it. You decide what it is. So just have a couple of questions about your bridge. What does your bridge look like? How strong is it? How are you building it? And what are you using to build your bridge? And who's helping you build it? Deuteronomy 6, 5, and 7, that's where we start. And I'll read it off again. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently, so carefully and conscientiously to your children. And you shall talk to them as you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down and you rise. Be intentional in your parenting. That would be my prayer for you today. Thanks.
Thank you, Donna Lynn. I really love an analogy of building bridges or for each of your kids, or even that at times they can be ahead of you. I'm at the beginning stages, I imagine, well, from my own experience, you're frantically putting that bridge up, or at least trying the best you can. Things are falling off. Whoops, I guess I need to redo that part. But just that mental picture, kind of helps with the long-term vision and goal. I really like that. I have a couple questions for you. The first one, when you just came in for our chat, the first one, when we're talking about that language of just let me think about it. If they ask you a question, maybe you're not sure of the answer. I use a lot, let me see, we'll think about it. What do you do when your kid is not accepting of the no, even after you've taken your time, you've told them, oh, I'll think about it, you're trying to let them down gently, I guess, but they're still very not accepting of the no afterwards.
Afterwards or the first time?
After. So they've asked you something, you said, let me think about it. You thought about it and decided the answer should be no. So you tell them the answer is no.
Right.
But they do not like that answer.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
And so it depends what they're asking, but I think you can go into, it's disappointing when you hear the no. You were really wanting to do blank. You were really wanting to do that, and that's disappointing. And if it's that possible, whatever that is, maybe it can be pushed on to another day. Maybe it's an absolute no and it'll never happen. So don't give promises where there is no promise. But engage in, you seem really disappointed. You don't know, blah, 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 blah. They lose it on you. But just let them go there. It's okay for them to be upset. It's like I always say, it's okay to be mad, but it's not okay to throw things. It's okay to be sad, but it's not okay to yell at me, or, it's okay to have that feeling. So on that, I can see that you really wanted it to be a yes. If they want to engage in that feeling, they may not want to engage in that conversation. I don't want to talk to you unless you say yes to me. Okay. But then we'd end up saying, well, what do you mean? I'm your mother. You will be talking to me. No. It's about that issue. So you have to decide, again, know who your child is. And even if you come back and revisit it at night and say, you know what, that was disappointing, because you really wanted a yes. And you got to know. You don't even have to explain why your no was your no. You just have to kind of join in them in their sorrow. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's what I would come back and they're saying. But if they're still belligerent and upset about it, don't come back to it. I can see you're upset. Don't put more effort into it than necessarily they are. But it is because they really want their own way.
Yes.
Yeah.
They do. I really like that, though, that you're basically naming their feelings. Like sometimes they don't even know what they're feeling. But yeah, that's really upsetting, and it's okay for them to be upset in that moment.
Yes. And you wanted it to be a yes. Mm-hmm. That's disappointing. That's upsetting. I would make anybody mad. Well, then say a yes if it makes it mad. Right? If it makes you mad, then say yes. They'll, still a no. And it's the same reasons as before. Because you usually give a reason why you've said the no. And say, well, I don't know what those are. Well, let me remind you, because most of us would say, I don't know what that. Well, of course you know what they were. I said them to you 3 times. See how we get engaged? No. You just say, you know what? You know the reasons. No, I don't. Oh, did you want me to say them again? Yes. And then you can ask them to say them back. By that time, they're done and moved on, typically, right?
In my experience, yes.
They're asking for something else, right? Yeah.
Let's jump to teenagers for a second.
Love.
Yes, me too. How do you teach your teenager not to be selfish and to see other people's perspective?
That's tough. That's where the volunteering is a really good part of it, to see, because sometimes we try to teach our children not to be selfish by just looking at our family and our world. The best way not to teach a teenager to be selfish is get them out of their box, out of their circle, out of their small things. And it's hard with COVID right now. So might be at this point in time more a book or a movie or a thing, and said, my goodness, and then have a conversation without even using the word selfish. That person was really giving. They did not have to do that, and talk about it and say things like that. And look for times where that child isn't selfish. So let's say she got out of the car and you said, oh, there's groceries in the car, and she turned around and grabbed one. Because selfish would be just get herself in the house and you make them come back out and do it. But if you set the stage, because they're not looking at groceries and going, no, I'm not going to pick you up. They're just thinking, I got to go and do whatever I want. Because most children, especially teenagers, are very myopic, and all they see is this, and on the end is a mirror. So they just and so you could say, there's groceries here. If that child chose to pick it up, that's the beginning of unselfishness. Hey, thanks for helping out. You want to find those small little parts where they are unselfish, right? Even if it's like two brushing their teeth and then let one of the siblings brush their teeth. Not a big, huge deal, but if you're working on selfishness with this child, look for the ways that she can or he can be unselfish, and then celebrate them. Not big party, but just show it, because, or tell them about it. But yeah, the volunteering and getting them out of their own world is really, really important. And also when they're talking, it's always me, and enough about me, but what do you think about me is how they talk all the time. So you just say, okay, that was interesting. I wonder how your friend felt in that situation. I can see that you were really upset, and try to put her in the other girl's shoes or the other person's shoes. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily their sibling. That doesn't always work with the sibling, but it does work with friends for some reason. Yeah.
When you're talking there about that empathy piece, it can be really hard for a lot of kids to grasp. What about younger kids? How would you begin to teach empathy to younger children who maybe might have a hard time with that?
Right, because they're myopic, right? And they want it all about them. So you can teach that and it depends on the child. So if your child is naturally empathetic, which means if anybody hurts himself, they may not run over and help them and do anything, but they might run over to see. That is a physical empathy. You have that other child that, oh, can I get you something? Can I do something for you? That's an empathetic child. Yeah, the child looks and walks away. And that's not that they don't have any empathy in them. It's just that they can't be bothered. It's not affecting them. So empathy in a child is hard to place in there. Again, it has to be taught. And so let's say you fall and they don't come over and say, hey, you need to come over and ask mom if she's okay. So you're teaching them. Or let's go over there and see if so-and-so's okay. And when you're driving by, a big one for empathy is when you're driving by, like I said, something going on, let's say there's an accident or something, you can talk about that and say, oh, I wonder what happened. There'll be lots of stories in your car. Wow, I wonder what we would do if we went there. Find out what everybody would do. It'll really tell you who your children are. Yeah, you froze, but you froze lovely, so that was good.
Yay.
And it's telling me my internet's unstable.
Oh,
that's okay.
Fun.
Aren't we all?
How do you keep your composure when your child doesn't listen and cries every time you bring her attention to something? And how do you avoid feeling mom guilt? So how do you keep your composure when your child doesn't listen and cries every time you bring attention to an issue?
Right. So probably go up against them, right? And
I'm assuming, yes.
Right. So that is it a girl or boy? Does it say or no? Her?
It doesn't.
Okay. So his or her first line of defense is tears. It's a habit now. They don't need it every time. Right? So you have to almost structure it, like kind of reboot them and realize, you know what? I can see it. You're crying about this, so you seem upset, but do you need to be this upset about this? Like you have to figure it out of what, because you'll know the difference and they'll probably know the cry. And so that's probably the most annoying cry that the parents don't like it, it's not a hurtful cry. So the next time it's a hurtful cry, not that you want one, but it's a hurtful cry, say, this, I can see why you're crying. And that's okay. It's okay to cry. The other is more of a whiny cry. So you need to make a better choice on that. You can tell me how you feel without that. That's one way. Another way is say, as soon as you talk to me in your normal voice, I can hear what you have to say. As soon as you can manage your, I'm assuming this child's younger, as soon as you can manage your words, because usually when they're crying, they're trying to talk and they're not, and you can't hear, you know what? Do you need help me breathe? Do you need me to help you breathe? Right? Do you want 5 birthday candles? Because as soon as when you're crying or when you're distracted, then you can say, however old they are, we all have 5 hands, we all have 5 fingers, typically. So you can blow out 5 candles. And so as soon as we blow in, then we start self-regulate our bodies from the cry, right? And then they're able to talk. Oh, and I can see that. Okay. And we don't need to say, that wasn't worth crying about. You can just say, see, you can manage to tell me with words, not through your tears. So something like that.
Do you have any recommendations for how to give a child space when the physical space that we live in is not huge? For example, we have 4 kids age 8 and under. The older 3 share 1 bedroom.
This is tough, and especially in COVID times, and especially with winter coming up, right? So my suggestion for that is try to make their space within their room just theirs. Right? So I have had a family go as far as to put down some tape in the room.
Okay.
And that's their space. This is your physical, and you need to ask if you can come into it. So they can do and decorate and do whatever they want in that space. So that would be for that. And then the other is I would find somewhere else in the house, and maybe they would ask you, maybe it would be the parents' room where you can have some time to yourself. Or maybe if you have a covered area outside, bundle up, and that's time to go outside by yourself, right? Find a spot. This is the spot that is when you want some quiet time, because if they share a room, they don't get that, right?
Sure.
So you'll have to be creative, because if it's a smaller area and with COVID and with lots of different things, if it wasn't COVID, I would say then maybe have them go to the library, maybe have them go to grandma's house or go to someone else's house for some more quiet time. Depends on the child and depends on what you need it for. You said 8 and under?
Yes.
Okay, so they're not going anywhere by themselves. So it would be, you know what, she gets to have 20 minutes in our room by herself with some books, mom and dad's room.
Mm-hmm.
And then you set the timer for 20 minutes or 15 or half an hour, whatever. And the child so everybody will want to do it to begin with. The child that needs it the most will be the one that will continue after a week or 2. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that really need it. So then you will know, okay, I have to be super intentional with this child to make sure that they have their time. So at this point in time, it seems like everybody needs it, but it's not necessary. Mm-hmm. So those would be my 2 suggestions, especially like put some tape down and say, this is your spot. You need to ask your sister or your brother if you can come into it. Mm-hmm. This is a reality. We're not building up another room.
Yes, that's a great suggestion. I just have about one more question here. After that, if there's any more questions, go ahead and feel free to type them in the chat. If you need to go, that's fine. You can go, but Donaldin is more than willing to answer your questions. If you have more questions and want to stay on for a little bit longer, feel free to do that. So the last question is about teenagers. Mm-hmm. How do you help teens and their moodiness, and how do you help them navigating COVID-19 moodiness? If it's related, maybe it's not. Yeah, any suggestions for the moody teen?
Read it out again.
How could you minimize the preteen or teenage moodiness, and how can you help them navigate their moodiness through COVID-19?
Right. I'm assuming the parents are calling it moodiness, the child is not.
I would assume so.
Right. And so then I would change the wording for not the parent. That's your word. That's right. And you're right on. They are moody. And if it's girls, it's totally around their cycle, right? And so you need to have a conversation about that and a check-in with them and realize, yeah, you are going to get more frustrated. Your hair isn't going to look how you want it to, but just be aware of it. Doesn't mean it's going to change. Her hair is still going to bug her. Be aware of it. So a conversation about that. And I think that boys as well are going through some really emotional and even some physical stuff. Things are changing, things are moody, and they don't know. They don't know how it rises up and rises it down. So a lot of even maybe looking into, hey, moods in teenagers. Let's look this up. You seemed like yesterday. Don't talk to them on that day. That's like asking for Mount St. Helens to erupt again, right? That is not a day to talk about it, but that's the day you want to because that's the day it's happening. So it's when it's not happening and just say, hey, what's going on? Let's figure out, because not only is it physically, but it's also mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of moving parts. And so bring them in and let's figure out this and let's figure out ways that we can do it and maybe a word that we could use to help you self-regulate, to help you manage how you're feeling so that you don't feel, because I can see that you're not happy in this either because everything's bugging you. So inside, tell me how you're feeling. Like, are you feeling like it's all rambled up like spaghetti, or how do you feel? Right? But there's other people that are like ducks and they're just like swimming along the water. You think, oh my goodness, they're so calm. Look underwater. They're going a mile a minute. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's other ducks that are all over the place. You think, oh, I don't have to guess what's happening there. So figure out what it looks like for that child and then do some investigating and figuring it out, maybe even together, not in the moment. And you know what? That's the day that maybe you come home and you do some more reading or you do some more, like, let's all be aware of it. Be aware of it yourself first and your family, and don't allow the siblings to tell them that they're in a bad mood, because that just puts you in a bad mood. So you as a parent say, and there will always be a parent that for some reason can say everything, you say exact same thing, but the other parent says it, it's off. And then the other parent says the exact same thing and it's okay. So figure out which parent can maybe more manage them at that point in time and more conversation. And maybe this talkative child is moody and doesn't want to talk 3 days a week, 3 days of the month, 4 days of the month. Hopefully not more. Then, yes. And then you have to be making sure that you speak into it when it's not happening. Just like it appears you need time to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go to this? Know your child. Do you feel like a walk? Do you feel like this? Like know what would pour into them? What would give them some less? But be aware of it. Realize that there's other teenagers. This is normal. This is not abnormal, because part of them, maybe they think they're just, nobody else is having this. It's just me. It's not. It's just what it is. And then their peers, I'm assuming their peers also will say, you can't act like that. That's the best, actually, if their peers did it to them. But they may only save that for home and be fine everywhere else.
Yes.
Yes.
I've witnessed that. Oh. Any strategies for disciplining at the younger years? Like, what are some good consequences to set up? I know lots of us feel guilty for disciplining or, setting up boundaries or consequences with our kids afterwards, or that they're missing out on things, so we don't, like,
right.
Oh, sure, you can go to that movie or do that thing or whatever.
Right.
How would you recommend navigating those situations?
Okay, so make sure that the consequences, the best ones are the natural consequences. Make them in the moment and appropriate for age and development. But don't overdo it. And so sometimes the consequences then, if you're mad, sometimes you have to wait a minute before you make them. So when they're younger and the consequences is you've given them a snack and they don't want it and they've hucked it at you, you're not getting a snack right now. That's all. Whereas we sometimes then go, how dare you throw this food? And then we give them a lecture on the cost of food. And then we top it off with kids that don't have food. They don't care. They're mad for whatever set them off. I don't know what set them off. If they decide to have a little tantrum and just splaw it all out there, just walk over them. Don't try to talk to them during this. Because if you listen to a child having a tantrum, they will be having a tantrum for a while, and all of a sudden it will dip. It's sometimes just the slightest inclination or the slightest change in the cry or the yelling or the screaming. That's when you're saying, do you need help? Not, are you done? Because that escalates them right back up. But do you need help? Can I help you somehow? And it still might be her wanting or she wanting the same thing that they had before, but it won't be as intense. So the discipline, did you want to know discipline methods or what to do?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so again, if in this room, where it's a happy room, it's a nice room, it's a quiet room, you're not being quiet, then you can join us as soon as you decide to be quiet. Where are you choosing to be? Right? So they're removed from that situation. So they go to either to the playroom or they may be on the stairs. You can have a time away. You can call it time out, time away, whatever you want to call it. But just for them to gather themselves. And a good thing for your child that doesn't want to be controlled, none of us want to be controlled, but is, I'm going to set the timer. When the timer goes off, then you need to come and make it right with me. And so children, sometimes that child is waiting for the timer, runs off, comes and makes it right. The other child, timer can go off and they wait another minute because they're not ready. That shows me that they're learning how to self-regulate.
Huh.
Right? Because then it's not me or you or the parent telling them when to get off, it's a timer. It's an object telling them that it's time to be done. And if you want to come and make it right with me and come back into the spot. So remove her from the area. You guys all don't leave. Because why should all 4 people be put out for one person? You can either walk to your room or I can carry you. And they flail and they're trying to hit and scratch and do everything. For a teenager, you ask them to go to their room because they've done something or whatever. Let's say they've been rude or something. You say, get up to your room. They stomp out the room, they slam the door. What do we typically do? We stomp out the room, we open the door, and we yell about the stomping and the door slamming. But what have we asked them to do? Go to the room. Where are they? They're in their room. Okay. That is what you ask them to do. Later on, you will talk about the stomping of the feet and the slamming of the door. And if you choose to do that, then you won't have a door to slam on. I've had many parents take off the doors off the hinges. Very easy fix. You need a hammer, bang, bang, and it's done. You can earn it back when you decide not to slam your door. So kind of those are more harsher, like taking the door off, a harsher consequence. But if you're beside yourself and doors are being slammed everywhere, there's something more going on. But at the beginning, you say, I can't let you do this. You're rattling everything here. Right? The people downstairs and people next door or whatever. Mm-hmm. So natural consequences are the best. And when you want to come back and join us, no problem. Make it right with whoever. But you definitely a removal. We all need sometimes some time away to just think and regather. I needed that time away to get back in my car. Mm-hmm. Right? We all need some space and time and say, I think you need some space and time. Let's talk in 5 minutes. So things like that.
Yeah, that's good. What do you do when your kids won't stop fighting with each other? And how do you help them to
get along?
Get along and build a good relationship. I mean, that's all, we would all love our kids to get along really well.
Right. Sometimes when you observe, and when I go into homes and I observe behaviors, I'm a neutral party, I see it, and I realize they're constantly fighting about the same thing. Now, it doesn't look like the same to the parent. All the parents are seeing is that they fight all the time. Typically, it's either the children don't think it's fair, one doesn't think it's fair over the other, and it isn't fair. Life isn't fair. That's just how it is. And other times it might be even one wanting something always that the other has. So there's a bit of jealousy there. So try and step back as a parent and think and take note, maybe observe it. It depends how old your children are. So if they're a little older, they're always fighting, observe it for about 2 days. If they're younger, you just probably need half a day to a day, if that, to observe, why are they always fighting? Are they always fighting when they play with that toy? Are they always fighting when we get in the car and they're always fighting where they're going to sit? So for the where they're going to sit in the car, then you make it a week. Like if that's one of the fighting issues, you know what? In the week, you're always in the front. That's your front. It's your week to be in the front. Then there's no fighting about that if that's the fight. So observe what are we always fighting about? What are they always fighting about? And then step back and say, okay, how can I figure this out? One solution was you have a week in the front seat. Another solution about you're always fighting about that toy. That toy is out of rotation for a little bit, if that's the toy. And then find things where they can come together. So let's say they like, I'm just taking this out of the air, baking, or they like baking with you, right? And said, hey, we all got along. This worked out really well for all of us, as opposed to you guys didn't even fight when we baked. That's a go light for let's fight. Green light. So you know what? We all did it. So applaud when they're not. I know it feels like they always are fighting. There's times when they're not. You could just walk by and go, it's great when you guys get along. Or when someone's being kind to another one, say, hey, that was so friendly of you. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. So look for the times where they're not fighting. And when they are fighting, observe them and see, why are they fighting? Why is this always? Is it always after, if they're younger, a nap time? Is it all, maybe they need time just to chill and not have the other person in their space.
Mm-hmm.
So observe why they're fighting. You probably can figure it out.
Any suggestions for how to get your teenage son, who's very guarded, to be aware and in touch with his feelings? It's a little tricky.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Any suggestions?
Right. Yeah. That teenagehood is a whole abyss unto itself, right? Right. And my question to this person would be, have they always been guarded about feelings? Right? Have they always been quieter? Maybe it's looking like they're guarded. Maybe they just don't want to, maybe they're grunting, maybe, the hood over, who knows? I don't know what's going on there. But there's something going on.
Mm-hmm.
The parents got to figure that out. Know who they are. What are they reading? What are they watching? What's on their phone? You need to be a detective. Parent should be handed out a detective badge because that's what you are. And so you need to go and find out what's going on. What is he watching? And if they're more opposed to the mom doing it as opposed to the dad, get the dad to do it. You know what? Tell me, hey, let's play this game. You don't want to play that game, but maybe that's how you connect with them.
Mm-hmm.
How much time is that teenager online? How much time is that teenager disconnected from real people and have what he thinks is friends everywhere, which isn't a thing, right? So again, be very observational. Figure it out. Is it around food? Is it not? Is he eating? Is he not? How is he sleeping? Is the phone with him at night? Is there a computer in his room? All these things need to be taken out. And I know they're harsh, especially if you've allowed them, but it's really protecting your children.
Mm-hmm.
What's pouring into your child, especially if they weren't like this and they've changed, something's speaking into their lives. You need to speak in louder than any other voice into their lives. You are the parent. You need to speak the loudest. So you need to know what's being spoken into their lives. So figure out what's going on. So a bit of investigating there first before you say, you need to be not so moody. No, that's not going to do it. What if they're watching something that's very dark and it's bringing them down and they don't know? So really figure out what's going on. I know we don't want to, but you need to. And if you aren't savvy in the way of technology, which I am not, I used to say to the girls all the time, you know, we can figure this out. And they were like, no, you can't. I said, I know, but Dad can. So find someone that can. They were right. And I was like, yeah, I know I can't, but I'm still going to. I'm still going to figure this out. You don't, just because of my inability to do it, right? So find someone that can, to figure out what are they locking, what are they hiding, and if they're hiding anything from you as well, right? And on their phones or what they're watching or whatever, you walk into a room and the screen is hit right away. And I guess I'll touch on this real quickly. No screens in rooms. Yeah, I know this is a big conversation, but if like a computer, always when you have it, like right now I'm in my office, so if John walked in, he couldn't see what was on. If this was a teenage room, the desk would be facing this way, so whoever's walking by can see what's on the screen. So wherever they're on a screen, like in doing work, you make sure that you know what it's on, and make sure that nothing's ever erased in here. I don't know how to do it, but I know it can be found. And they'll try and erase the history. Someone can find it. There's a lot of people that can find all that. So figure out where they're at. What rabbit hole are they in that this is what they're producing? Okay, that's technology. Secondly, what's going on with them? Have you had their blood work done? Have you checked what's going on for their body? Are they having body awareness and not wanting it? Like what's going on with physically, what's going on mentally?
Mm.
So there's a lot. Probably a heavier answer than you wanted to hear.
No, I think it's reality sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, I think that is all the questions we have this evening. So I just want to thank you, Donalyn, so much for joining us, for talking about, I think just even realizing, like we talk about intentional parenting and it seems so big, so far off, but it's really about being there for your kids, being inquisitive, asking, like wanting to know, wanting to get to know them, wanting to know what's going on for them and be in their world. So I really appreciate you sharing with us. I love your practical tools and tips. I feel like I walked away with a lot. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so if you have to go, thank you so much for joining us for our parenting webinar series. I hope you enjoyed them. Thank you for joining us this evening and have a good night.
And that's it.
Yes.
Oh, you're welcome. Someone just thanked us, Chris did.
Great. It's always a little, do I end? Do we let them leave? I don't want to be rude. The last time I just cut it all off, so.
No problem. They can always, anybody that's listening or whatever, they can always, if they have more questions, they could always go to nextsteps.life.
Absolutely. Yes, you can contact Donalyn there through our website.
Yeah.
You have a lot of good information on your website as well.
Well, that's good.
Yes,
good stuff. Just need to update my pictures.
Well, you look the same, so.
Well, thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. It was a good evening, so thank you.
Okay, if you have any other questions, you need anything, I will leave now unless you want me to stay on till you have any questions.
That is all good. You're good. Okay. All right.
Take care. Bye.